9 years of unanswered voicemails. 9 years of birthday cards dropped in mailboxes, wondering if they even made it past the door. 9 years of driving by my daughter's subdivision in Scottsdale, just sitting at the entrance because I no longer had a place inside. 9 years of being a ghost in my own family's story. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, my son-in-law called. He said the words I had been waiting nearly a decade to hear. "We want you to be part of the family again." I thought it was real. I was wrong. My name is Thomas Hayward. This is my story. It started one Wednesday morning in my apartment in Cincinnati. I woke up at 5:47 a.m., the same way I had for 38 years. My body still running on electrician's hours, even though I had been retired for 4. I lay there for a minute in the dark, listening to the pipes knock in the walls. 3rd floor, 2-bedroom apartment, $720 a month. More space than I needed. I kept the 2nd bedroom because my granddaughter Emma's drawings were taped to the wall from when she was 3 years old, and I had watched her for a week while my daughter went to a conference. Emma was 12 now. I hadn't seen her in 9 years, but I kept those drawings. I made coffee with the same drip machine I bought at a garage sale the year after my wife, Sandra, passed. The carafe had a small crack down the side, sealed with food-safe epoxy I'd applied myself. Still worked perfectly. I stood by the kitchen window, watching the street below. A man walked a retriever in the early gray light. A woman in scrubs waited at the bus stop, checking her phone. Life moving the way it always did without me, mostly. The walls of my living room held photographs I no longer looked at directly. I'd catch them in the corner of my eye, like you avoid a wound you know is still open. There was my daughter Rebecca at her high school graduation. That gap-toothed smile she had before the orthodontist fixed everything. My son-in-law Derek was not in any of those photos. He came later. He came, and then, slowly, I didn't. Rebecca married Derek Ashworth 8 years into their relationship. He was a corporate real estate developer from a wealthy family that had made money in Phoenix for 3 generations. He was polished. He wore watches that cost more than I made in 2 months, pulling wire through commercial buildings across 3 counties. I never disliked Derek. I tried hard not to, but something shifted in Rebecca the year she married him. Something subtle at first and then not subtle at all. I realized what was happening one Thanksgiving, 11 years ago, before the silence fully descended. I brought a sweet potato pie Sandra used to make from scratch and wore the sport coat I'd bought for my retirement party. Derek's mother, a tall woman named Constance, was there. She wore pearls at the dinner table and referred to people who didn't have investments as having a cash flow problem. When Rebecca introduced me, she said, "This is my father, Tom. He was an electrician." The past tense. Like I was already someone she had moved beyond. I stood there holding my pie and smiled, feeling the air change in the room. I don't think Rebecca noticed, but I did. The calls got shorter the following year. The year after that, the invitations stopped. I found out about Emma's birth from a former coworker who saw the announcement on Facebook. I called Rebecca immediately. She answered on the 3rd ring, sounding distracted. "Oh, right, I was going to call you. We've just been so overwhelmed." I asked if I could visit. She said they would let me know when things settled down. They never did. The gifts I sent disappeared without acknowledgement. A wooden rocking horse I built myself in my garage for Emma's 1st birthday. A hand-engraved silver bracelet for Rebecca on her 40th. A set of leather-bound classics for Derek's birthday because someone had told me he liked to read. I tracked those packages. Every single one was delivered. Not one thank you. Not one text. Not one phone call. I tried to understand it. I spent more hours than I should have sitting at this kitchen table, going back through years of memories, trying to find the moment I could have acted differently. Sandra would have known what to do. Sandra could talk to Rebecca in a way I never quite managed, something between mothers and daughters that I wasn't equipped to navigate. Sandra died when Rebecca was 26. Maybe that was part of it. Maybe Rebecca needed her mother to be the bridge between us, and without her, there was nothing holding the planks in place. Or maybe it was simpler. Maybe Rebecca had decided that a retired electrician from Cincinnati, with arthritic hands and a second-hand car, didn't fit the life she had built in Scottsdale, with manicured neighborhoods, charity galas, and a husband who knew the right people. Maybe I was the wrong kind of father for the person she had chosen to become. I had almost made peace with not understanding it. Almost. It came on a Tuesday in March. I was eating soup at my kitchen table when Derek's name appeared on my phone. I stared at it for a full 4 rings before I answered. "Tom," he said, his voice warm in that way expensive people's voices are. "It's Derek. How have you been?" I told him I'd been fine. "Listen," he said. "Becky and I have been talking a lot lately about family. About the fact that Emma is growing up and she doesn't know her grandfather. That's not right, Tom. That should never have happened." He paused. "We want to fix it." I held the phone, looking at the crack in my coffee carafe. "We're hosting Emma's 13th birthday in 2 months," he continued. "Big family celebration. Her first real teenager party. We want you there. We want Emma to meet you properly. She asks about you, Tom." "She does." That last part did something to me I wasn't prepared for. "Emma asks about me." I set my spoon down. I told him I appreciated the call. He said he would have Rebecca send the details. Before hanging up, he said, "It's going to be great, Tom. Family's family." I sat there for a long time after the call. I ran through the reasons not to trust it. 9 years of evidence that my daughter had written me out of her life as deliberately as someone changing a phone number. The pattern was clear. The silence had never been accidental. But there was Emma, 12 years old, turning 13. She drew pictures on my wall when she was 3, apparently asked about me. I pulled out the business card for the travel agent on Vine Street and waited until morning before I called. For the next 3 weeks, I prepared carefully, not with excitement, because I had learned what hope cost me in this family, but with discipline. I bought a new blazer at Dillard's. Navy, $140. I searched for a birthday gift and settled on a telescope. A real one, not a toy. With a tripod and a star chart booklet, because Derek had mentioned once that Emma was interested in astronomy. I set that money aside from what I had been saving since Sandra passed. I didn't tell myself it would go perfectly. I told myself I would handle whatever happened without falling apart. The flight to Phoenix was 2 hours and 20 minutes. I took a cab from Sky Harbor to the address in North Scottsdale. The neighborhood had no sidewalks because no one walked anywhere. Every driveway held at least 2 luxury vehicles. The lawns looked airbrushed. When the cab turned onto my daughter's street, I looked out the window and understood something. She hadn't just moved away from me geographically. She had moved to a different country altogether. The house was enormous. 2 stories of sand-colored stucco with a gated front entrance and a cascading water feature in the front garden. I stood on the front step with my gift bag, feeling my blazer pull slightly across the shoulders, and rang the bell. A woman I didn't recognize opened the door. "Staff," I realized. She took my name, looked at her tablet, nodded. "Right this way," she said. Inside, the house looked like a hotel lobby where money was not a concern. Every surface chosen for visual impact. The kitchen alone was larger than my entire apartment. She led me through French doors into the backyard where the party was already underway. 40, maybe 50 people populated the space. Children ran around the pool, which had been sectioned off with a temporary gate. Adults clustered near a bar that looked professionally installed. A DJ booth occupied the far corner. White and gold balloons clustered everywhere. Tables held catered food. Rebecca saw me before I saw her. She was standing with a group of women, all of them holding glasses of what I assumed was Prosecco. When our eyes met, she said something brief to the women and walked toward me. She looked like a magazine version of my daughter, hair smooth, dress tailored, expression practiced. She kissed me on the cheek, the way people kiss distant relatives at weddings when they cannot remember their names. "Dad, you made it. Good flight." I said the flight was fine. She looked at the gift bag. "I can have someone put that with the others," she said, gesturing vaguely at a table piled with gifts. She didn't take it herself. I held on to it. I wanted to give it to Emma. Rebecca's expression shifted for a fraction of a second. "Of course," she said. "She's somewhere. Let me find her." And then she turned and walked away, and I stood alone, holding the telescope at my granddaughter's birthday party. I found a seat near the potted saguaro on the far edge of the gathering and stayed there, watching the party turn. No one spoke to me directly except one older man who sat next to me briefly, introduced himself as someone's uncle from Denver, and asked if I liked the Bengals. I said I used to follow them. He moved on. At some point, Derek materialized, wearing a linen shirt, looking the way successful men look when they are in their element. He sat across from me, smiled, extended his hand. "Tom, great you're here. Good to finally do this." I shook his hand. He had a good handshake. We talked briefly about nothing, the flight, the weather, Emma growing up so fast. Then his tone shifted in that subtle way you only recognize when machinery is about to change its sound. "Listen," he said. "I wanted to run something past you. Actually, a few of us wanted to." He gestured. I turned to see Rebecca walking toward us with a man I recognized as Derek's younger brother, Marcus. Marcus was a financial advisor. He sat. Rebecca put her hand on Derek's arm. Marcus opened a leather portfolio he had apparently been carrying. "Tom," Derek began, "we're in the process of acquiring a piece of land. 50 acres, about 40 miles outside Sedona, just past the Red Rocks. Incredible views, complete privacy. We're planning to build a compound, a family retreat, something permanent, something the next generation inherits." I looked at him, unsure what to say. Marcus continued without pause. "We've structured it as a family investment vehicle. Derek and Rebecca are in. My wife and I are in. Derek's parents have already committed. Total project cost is $4.2 million. He turned a page in the portfolio and slid it toward me with practiced efficiency. "As part of the family, we want you involved. You'd hold an equity stake. You'd have access to the property whenever you wanted. You and Emma could build something here, Tom. Real time together. Summers, holidays. That's what you want, isn't it?" The paper in front of me had my name typed at the signature line. A dollar amount was highlighted in yellow, $290,000. I looked at the number. Then I looked at Rebecca. She was watching me with the expression of someone who had rehearsed for this moment and was waiting for it to perform just as she had planned. I thought about the phone records on my home. 9 years of one-sided calls. I thought about the rocking horse I had built and never got acknowledged. I thought about driving to the entrance of this neighborhood, sitting in my car because I wasn't welcome past the gate. I thought about Emma saying, "Wow, that's actually really cool," and how that moment, 20 seconds of genuine contact with my granddaughter, was the only real thing that had happened to me today. $290,000. Sandra and I had saved for 40 years. I had sold our house in Hyde Park after she died and moved to the apartment. I had not touched the principal. I had lived carefully, managed the interest, planned for medical costs, planned for the long stretch alone. They knew the number. Marcus was a financial advisor. They had looked. I sat with it for a moment. The portfolio opened in front of me, the pen Marcus had placed beside it, the ice melting in my iced tea, the party continuing behind us with its music and laughter. Then I folded the portfolio closed and pushed it back across the table. "No," I said. Derek blinked. Rebecca's expression froze. "I appreciate the call," I said, looking at Derek. "I appreciate this, but no, not the money and not the terms." "Dad," Rebecca said, her voice dropping, "we're giving you an opportunity to actually be part of this family, to be around Emma. You said you wanted that." I looked at her. "I did want that. I still do. But that's not what this is." "Of course it is," Marcus said, his voice reassuring in the professional way. "This is a chance to build something real, Tom, something lasting." I looked at my son-in-law. I looked at my daughter. I looked at the pre-printed signature line with my name on it. "If you wanted me around, Emma," I said quietly, "you had 9 years to pick up the phone." No one spoke. I stood up, excused myself, and walked back through the French doors into the cool interior of the house, past the impeccable kitchen, through the entry hall, and out the front door. The afternoon sun hit me like a wall. I called a cab from the end of the driveway and waited by the water feature. A mockingbird was working through its repertoire in the neighbor's bottle brush tree. I listened to it until the car came. On the flight back to Cincinnati, I did not cry. I sat in my middle seat with my hands loose in my lap and thought clearly in a way I had not thought in years. The thinking felt like removing splinters, one at a time. They had never forgotten me. That was the thing. You cannot be strategic about someone you have forgotten. They had been waiting, letting distance accumulate until the number in my savings account became more interesting than the inconvenience of a working-class father from Cincinnati. 6 weeks later, a package arrived in my mailbox. Small box, bubble wrap inside, a card tucked under the tape. No return address, but the postmark was Scottsdale. I brought it up to the condo and set it on the kitchen table. Frank was coming for dinner later. I opened it. Inside the bubble wrap was a framed photograph. Emma, maybe 3 years old, sitting on my knee in my old living room in Cincinnati. I didn't remember the photo being taken. Someone had snapped it without my noticing. Emma looking up at me while I read to her from a book I couldn't see the cover of. My face turned down toward her. Both of us absorbed in whatever the story was. There was a card, Rebecca's handwriting. "Dad, I know you have no reason to believe me. I know I've spent years giving you every reason not to, but I'm writing this because a therapist told me to write what's true, regardless of whether anyone reads it. And this is true. I was ashamed of where we came from. Not because you weren't good, but because Derek's world had different rules, and I was afraid of failing in it. I thought if I kept you at a distance, it would be easier. I told myself you were fine. I told myself you didn't need us. I told myself a lot of things that weren't true." Emma found this picture in a box last month and asked me who that old man was, and I had to sit down. That was the moment. That was when I understood what I had done. I'm not writing this to ask for anything. I know that time is gone. I just needed you to know that I understand now, and that I'm sorry. I read it twice. I set it down and stood at the window, looking at the river. I wasn't surprised to find that I cried. It had been many years since anyone in my family had spoken plainly to me, and the plainness of it, the complete absence of maneuvering, did something to the tight place I had been carrying in my chest since before Sandra died. I stood at that window for a while and let it happen. It ran its course the way things do when you stop trying to redirect them. When Frank knocked at 6, I was myself again. The photograph was on the bookshelf. I hadn't decided where it belonged yet, but it wasn't in a box. He came in and looked at me once and said, "Rough day." I said, "More complicated day." He said, "Those were sometimes the same thing." I said, "Sometimes they weren't." He said, "Fair enough." We made pasta and talked about the woodworking class, and whether Gene at the hardware store was actually going to retire like he kept saying he would. Frank had brought sourdough from the bakery on Lexington. We ate, and the river went dark outside the window. The city hummed below us. I didn't write back to Rebecca. I didn't call. The door I had closed was closed with intention, and I intended to leave it that way. Not from hardness, from the simple knowledge that some things, once they have run their course, are finished. That's not the same as bitterness. Bitterness wants something. I didn't want anything from that direction anymore. What I wanted was here. Morning walks along the river trail where the sycamores were already losing their bark in long white curls. Coffee with Frank. Thursday evenings with a chisel and a piece of cherry wood. A room full of people learning the same things. Dorothy, with her thermos. Abel in his greenhouse. The woman at the farmer's market who saved me the end-of-day bread because she knew I'd take whatever she had left. Small recognitions. The ordinary texture of being present somewhere that wanted you. On my 68th birthday, Frank brought a cake from the French bakery on Wall Street. Too much cake for 2 people. And we sat on the balcony, watching the late October light go over the ridge. He said, "What do you want for the rest of it?" I said, "I think I've already got most of what I want." He said, "That's a good place to be." I said, "It took me a while to find it." He said, "Most things worth finding do." I thought about Emma, 13 now, almost 14, looking through a telescope somewhere dark enough for stars. I hoped she was. I hoped someone in her life was teaching her to look up. I hoped she would be okay. I thought about Sandra, what she would have said about all of this. She had always been better than me at letting things be what they were. She used to say, "You can't fix what someone else broke on purpose." I used to argue with her about that. I had stopped arguing. The sun went behind the ridge. The river went dark below, and the lights of the city came on, one at a time, scattered and warm. Frank poured more coffee. I pulled my jacket closer. The air smelled like wood smoke and coming rain. This is what I want to say to anyone who is sitting somewhere right now, feeling the particular weight of being forgotten by people who should have remembered you. It is a specific kind of loneliness. It is different from other kinds because it comes disguised as a question, what did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? If I had been different, would they have chosen differently? I spent 9 years living inside those questions. I sent gifts into silence. I drove to gates I wasn't allowed through. I made my voice smaller so it would be easier to ignore and somehow thought that would help. Here is what I know now. Some people will not choose you, no matter what you offer them. That is not an answer to the question of your worth. That is information about theirs. The moment you stop waiting for them to reconsider is the moment you get your life back, not the life you lost. A different one. One you build with your own hands, for your own reasons. One where the people who show up do so because they want to, not because they need something from you. It does not come fast. It does not come easy. But if you choose yourself, if you have the courage to close a door that was only ever open toward one direction, on the other side of it is something you might have forgotten was possible. Peace. Real peace. The kind that asks nothing of you. If this story reached you where you are, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me your time. You are not alone in this, and you never were. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. There are more stories coming, and every one of them matters because every one of them is about someone's journey, just like yours.